I have failed in my own way, I need to build relationships. I see all these, if you look at any old entrepreneur picture, the old billionaires, they generally it's them, but they also have people around them, and they do deals with big companies, and they do affiliate deals, and they do other. So I was like, I need to go out and build relationships. And so since then, that's what I've done is I said, okay, I'm going to go out and scale relationships. By far and away, that was the best thing I'd ever did.
All right, guys, we got another episode of the Deeper Than Dough podcast today. We have Shawn Finnegan with TaxHive, who's become a really good friend and just accomplice into all the stuff that we get into, and kind of known as a networker and kind of like a father to a lot of people in the Valley. And, you know, to tee it off, I'd say one of the things that I respect most about you is your willingness to help others and put them into a spot where they can be successful without asking for anything in return. And so to start that off, like, I want to welcome you to the podcast, and we're excited to get to know a little bit more about you. And why don't we start with that? Like, what makes you you, and tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah. So obviously we had an event here. That was cool. Yeah. I hit Bennett up and I was like, hey, let's do just a lunch. Will you sponsor, kind of host a lunch here?
Yep.
And didn't give much more information than that. So I think you thought it would be like something for me potentially, right? And then I think we had 35, 40 people show up that were all high-end business owners. And then he really had the stage time.
Yep.
And it was a great experience. Plus we got to walk around, see the cookies and the factory and everything else. It was a really cool experience.
And maybe we talk about that for a second, because obviously you've had your hands in a bunch of different business things, but what I'd say recently is you're kind of become a really good connector and helping people set up for success. And it's called the X Lunch, right? So bring the right people into the room where ideas and masterminded people can just connect over a really good performing business, where you kind of show them a new business model and allow them to ask questions and whatnot. And how long ago did you start that? What's been like really successful of having those types of people in the room together?
Yeah, so it's called the X event that we do, and I basically was doing this, my business partner is Kevin O'Leary.
Yep.
And 2 years ago, have you ever been around someone that he's just so efficient with his time and so busy that you feel like a slacker?
Yep.
I mean, it's like there's a few certain people that are they're so good about scheduling and everything else. And so whenever I'm with them, I feel like I got to be calling Bennett or I got to be calling my friends, is like acting like I'm busier than I am, because it's so amazing how good they are at this stuff. So a couple of years ago, I was like, hey, Kevin, what's your New Year's resolution? And this was like in December. And he's like, I got one New Year's resolution. And I was like, what is it? And he's like, I want to be 10% more efficient with my time this year. That was his goal.
Oh, gosh.
And I'm thinking, good luck, man. Because I don't see 10%. When you're with them, like, there's not 10% anywhere.
Nope.
We all have 10%, but someone like him, I'm like, where's he going to get 10%?
And you get to see the inner workings of how this human operates, right?
Yeah.
Like you're with him, you see his calendar, and you're like, how?
Yeah. Where is he going to possibly, unless he takes his sleep time.
Does he have an assistant, I'm assuming?
Oh, yeah. He has a right-hand person that is amazing.
Yep.
So anyways, around about January, February, I saw him again. I was like, hey, Kevin, how did your New Year's resolution go? And he's like, it went really well. I figured it out. I was like, what'd you do? How'd you do that? And he said that he basically pulled out his calendar and he deep dived and he just kept racking his brain. And he came to the conclusion that he has to eat, because he saw these holes in his schedule. He's like, look, this is a lunch appointment that I just normally am scheduled just to eat lunch. Why don't I use that time to effectively engage and connect with people? Yep. So he literally put a system around that. So his right-hand person, Nancy, if he flies into San Diego, his right-hand person will call up the top business owners in San Diego, say, hey, how would you like to have dinner with Kevin O'Leary? He'd like to meet you and your business.
Yep.
And then they bring out a video guy and get content for that hour and a half, 2 hours at dinner. And he was able to pack in another 10% of his efficiency of his time.
That's crazy.
Right?
Yep.
And I'm like...
And then it's compounded because you just made good friends with everybody. So, well, hats off to him.
Plus, I mean, he has, many companies he's done deals with on Shark Tank. So, and he's looking for allegiances and alliances and relationships that he can do business with. Yep. So he can do business with that person. He can do content. He can build a relationship that they may know someone who needs it. So I came to the conclusion. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to not try to have lunch alone. So that's where I started about 2 years ago, saying there's a book called Never Do Lunch Alone. It's like you're eating anyways. You might as well break bread with people. There's something magical when you sit down and have a cookie with someone like we're having right now. We're having a cookie together, right? It's like something magical is in the air because you got a cookie right in front of us. I mean, how do you beat that, right? So the idea is don't do lunch alone. Most people, even if you take 30 minutes, even if you work at an office, it's a great way to build relationships with people at the office. Say, hey, Mike, I'd love to, let's grab lunch. We'll bring lunch in on Tuesday next week. I'd like to get to know you and what you do better here. Whatever it is. So I made a target to do that. I've maybe had a couple of reschedules, but for the most part, I've never done lunch alone in 2 years, Monday through Friday.
That's awesome.
2 years straight.
And it's efficient because, you get to eat, but then you typically get to find new food that you end up loving. And
exactly. I actually bring food in. So at my office, I bring it in. We bring it in for all of our employees. So it is the one thing that if we try to take it away from employees at this point, I think it would be a riot on our hands. Yeah, because we bring food in every day. So I just grab the food that we have together and I bring people in. Hang out.
If you do the math on it, it's actually easier to bring food in than have people leave and lose those productive hours.
Just walk around, test it one time, do a pizza Friday in your office. They grab their pizza, they go sit down at their desk, they start working. Yeah. You get efficiency, you get time.
And then you get a little bit of a break because everybody's collaborating and it strengthens relationships there and takes a little bit of the pressure off for the workday for a minute.
Exactly. So 2 years ago, I started saying, what if I had 5 people come to a lunch? What if I did 10 people? It's something magical happens of the Cade, right? So if I had Cade, Mike, we go to lunch together and I bring 2 other entrepreneurs, you get this incredible relationship that starts with a small group. So I started with these smaller ones. I had Bennett come. Bennett's always one of my top intros, hey, come to this lunch. So it went from 3 people, 5 people to 10 people to the Dirty Dough when we had 40. At Bucked Up, we had 70 people. The next one's at Zydax with Dan Young. We're going to have probably 100. So it just keeps growing because people love. We're designed to connect with people.
Yep. Right. We want that story. We want the connection, and you bring high caliber people, which is even better. Mm-hmm. And it just keeps getting better and better every time.
Yeah.
So you've got the lunches going, and what have you seen? What's some of the coolest outcomes that you've seen? I can share one of the things that I've seen from some of the people that you connected, but what about on your end because of this effort and initiative? What are some outcomes that you've seen and people have been blessed with?
So I saw one just even last week. So this buddy of mine, his name is Mike Hout. He runs a big electrical contracting business. And I introduced him. I was I keep meaning to introduce him to someone. I introduced him to my buddy, Dan, and made the intro. And they're it turns out they met each other years ago. Anyways, I just kind of didn't even think about it. And then I went and threw some discs and disc golf with my buddy Mike last week. And he's like, hey, thanks for that intro. And I was trying to remember, oh yeah, what intro? And he's like, oh yeah, I talked to Dan. And I was like, oh cool, how'd that go? And he said, well, I got 11 properties out of it. And I was like, 11 properties, what does that represent in sales? And he's like, 150 grand. And I'm like, you got 150 grand in one text from Dan on this intro. There is the greatest way to scale is to scale relationships
easily.
And people just don't get out of their lane and actually start doing that stuff. So share your experience and what you saw.
Well, Ryan Boswell, this close connection and how he got placed in kind of your circle and you set him up with his contacts at Cold Plunge and the trajectory that he's now on. I think what's cool is the people that you attract are looking for win-wins. Most people that are looking for partners or growing want what's best for themselves, but you set it up so that way it's what's best for that person and helping them get upside, and then everybody wins at the end of the day.
100%.
Which a lot of people forget about because it's a long-term relationship and it just keeps growing versus being short-sighted.
Yeah. So a lot of people just say, don't be transactional, which I agree with. You don't want to go selling everyone. It's hey, he's that, that's ineffective too, right? It's ineffective to go try to sell people. Hey, I got my whole presentation. I want to, it's you run for cover.
Yep.
But I'm a big. So a lot of people kind of skirt around it. If there's a business potential that makes sense with two groups, they'll kind of skirt around it because they don't want to be that guy selling everyone.
Yep.
But if there's a business alignment that makes sense, then take advantage of it. Really just line that up. The greatest way to go deep in the relationships is to do a business relationship together.
I agree.
I'm sure at Dirty Dough, you have your franchisees, all those relationships, everything else. I mean, you're constantly in communication with them.
Always. They're
Right?
our number one advocates. If
Yeah.
they're successful, we're successful,
Yep.
which at the end of the day is the best thing that business can have happen. I mean, we actually sell more franchises because our franchisees speak very well about us.
Yeah.
They validate our calls and they bring new people in. So it's
Yeah.
something that just wins at the end of the day. So,
Yep.
you're at Tax Hive. How did you maybe give some context of because this will get into our mental health and what brings you joy and fulfillment, but
Yeah.
getting into business with Kevin O'Leary, you had to have a pedigree and to even get to that point and to set up a business like this, why don't you give us just a little bit of context? How big is the company? Where is it at right now?
Yeah.
What are some of the goals? And then what led you here? And then how do you set yourself up for mental success to be able to handle everything that you're doing?
So I met Kevin years ago. I actually met him. The first time I met him was in Toronto, Canada.
Okay.
It was in the middle of the winter time. And I was kind of nervous. I'd never met him before in any way, shape, or form. It was just an appointment that was set up by his right-hand person. So I roll into Toronto. It is like maybe 5 degrees below zero. I mean, it's freezing. So by the time I actually got to his office, I was still like frozen. My brain was frozen.
Yep.
So I was trying to warm up because I had to go in there and pitch him. And I think the mistake that most people make when they're pitching or presenting to a big brand is they say, hey, this is my ecosystem. I want you as this brand to come over to my side and be a part of my ecosystem.
Yep.
Versus the other way around. Every big brand has a vision and they know where they're going.
Yep.
So my first question, I sat down with him, was like, Kevin, tell me about your brand. What do you want to accomplish? Where do you see your projections? Where do you see yourself going in the next 5 years as a shark?
Yep.
And just start. It's like, and I always get this, like, how do you actually talk to people? When you're at a party, it's like, or when you're at a networking event, just Stephen R. Covey, seek to understand and then to be understood, right? Yep. So just listen to people. Go up to someone and say, hey, what are you working on now? Oh yeah, tell me more about that. How does that? And just understand what they have and they'll tell you what's going on. So Kevin laid out his whole brand, everything else. And then I was able to come in and say, hey, this is where we can fit into your world, not the other way around.
I love that.
Right. So that was the first time I met him. And then years later, this is about 4.5 years ago, I sent him a text that said, hey, we want to present to you a business called Tax Hive. Didn't give him a lot of information. And so we set up an appointment. And this was in Phoenix, literally at a dinner. So you know what they say if you watch Shark Tank, what does he say about the numbers?
As far as very few people actually get a deal.
Yeah, well, no, more about he rips on people that don't know their numbers.
Oh, yeah. You have to know your numbers.
He actually says you're dead to me if you don't know your numbers, right?
Yep.
Here you have an opportunity to present in front of sharks and people don't know their numbers.
Which is crazy.
Like hammer.
Yep.
So me and the team here, we're just like studying our numbers. We had pie charts and line graphs and we're like, we're going to know our numbers. Right? You know what I mean? I'm not going to get called out on the carpet not knowing our numbers for this dinner, right? Because that's his thing.
Yep.
So we're at dinner. We stand up to give the presentation on, the biggest problem we're trying to solve is small business owners are underserved in this space. They spend too much in taxes. They have no plan. They kind of put it off until tax time. And then that's a horrible strategy. The buzzer sounded, the game's over, and now they're hoping for a miracle that they don't have to pay a lot in taxes. That's generally what happens.
Yep.
So we wanted to get out ahead of it and create a plan where we could save a small business owner a lot of money. And then what can they do with that? They can put it into employees, they could put it into commissions, product, everything else, and actually fuel the economy.
Yep.
So we start launching into the presentation, sitting at dinner. Imagine the shark just staring you down. It's like, they're good at it, man. They're just staring. They're seeing what kind of metal you're made of, right?
Yep.
So you launch into our presentation. I remember 3 minutes in, he's stops, Simon Cowell, stop, both hands out, stop. And it was this pit in your stomach.
What did I do wrong?
And I was looking around and was I remember looking at these guys and they're like
and you're
shaking their head.
seasoned too. Like you're not like a first time entrepreneur doing this. Like,
yeah.
Let's make sure that backstory's in there.
Yeah, and it's all that thing is like, man, I am seasoned. I should know this. Where did I make a turn go wrong? And these guys are looking at me like, you messed it up. And they're all like, we all messed it up. And he's like, I'm in. Whatever it's going to take. I'm in. This is something he'd been looking for. He used to have a tax business in Canada.
Yeah.
And he regretted selling it. It was an amazing cash flow business. And he's like, because he's a big advocate. He knows these small business owners are just getting hammered and don't think about it. Yep. And here we come up with a solution and show him the solution. He's like, I'm going to get behind it. And so that was like a good 4 years ago. So he's an actual partner in the business. And if you look up taxhive.com, he's all over there. We give tons of value content. And so he's been an incredible partner for 4 years.
Cool. I'm so happy for you.
Yeah.
And does he introduce you to all of his Portco companies and have a very good relationship there?
He's been beyond amazing.
How have you found, maybe before we get into the mental health side, like how do you leverage a caliber of person like that? Where obviously he's incentivized, but like how do you leverage him to a maximum output that continues to drive value where TaxHive is on the forefront of what he does?
Yeah, I think for entrepreneurs watching, a great way to scale your business is it doesn't have to be a shark. It could be anyone that has a really big following or even a good following or a better following or a following your size, and go out and build that relationship with that person.
Yep.
Figure out what they want. Like right now, the economy's tough. I mean, believe it or not, we're going through a correction and it's difficult for a lot of, entrepreneurs. There's a great thing called an affiliate program. I talk to so many entrepreneurs like, hey, tell me about your affiliate program. Affiliate program is basically saying, hey, if you bring me a sale, I'm going to pay your percentage of that.
Yep.
Can you imagine? Just line them up all day long. And a lot of entrepreneurs haven't actually done that. They just, we have our sales team and, I'm paying benefits and all this stuff. It's like, hey, do an affiliate program. And if you have an affiliate program, start really adding some fuel to that fire because it's amazing what that can get you. You can scale so fast.
Yep.
Right? So go to these business owners, go to someone like this. I'm on a podcast talking about it right now. This is a perfect case in point. I'd love to get traffic for TaxHive. That's what we're talking about, right?
Let's get them some traffic.
There you go. And vice versa, right? We want you to benefit, make it something mutually beneficial, but go out of your lane, go talk to your own contacts in your own phone, find out who's got a good following, look them up on Instagram, reach out to them, DM them. Try to do as many affiliate deals as you possibly can, and you'll get pound for pound an incredible return.
Yeah. Affiliates by far one of the best. And it's a low hanging fruit. It's like we all have contacts in our phone. Why not go after them?
Yeah, exactly right.
After them?
Yeah. I've seen great things happen. We all have from leveraging relationships. Huge believer in it.
So now we got to know you a little bit and we got to know about like what you've been up to. Let's talk about the mental health and struggle side because not every entrepreneurial journey is peaches and rainbows.
That's right.
Like,
it's
like an addictive sickness that we have of getting our teeth kicked in all the time. So like, what have you done to be proactive about your mental health to fortify that?
Yeah. So I'm glad you bring it up. And I love that the cause with Dirty Dough is part of that. It's mental health because it is obviously a massive issue out there. And the other thing that's great that you just brought up, which is entrepreneur. It's what we sign up for, but it's difficult. It's like what Elon says, or you go to the edge of the abyss and jump in, right? There's a lot of chewing glass involved in it.
Yep.
And I think some people have the missed expectation. Hey, I just set this business and I set it and it just goes on autopilot and it's great. So my first business I built was 2009, significant business. I went out and raised $1.5 million, which is a whole experience, by the way.
Oh, that's a whole
experience. So I had a plan. I remember sitting in a hoagie shop with two guys that were my partners and we built a plan. So that tells you I had no office and I had a computer. That was about all I started with, right?
Yep.
So we're just awkwardly staring at each other like, how do we make an impact on the world, right? So we had our plan. And according to the plan, I was going to be a millionaire.
And this is the best time because you don't know how hard it is at this point, right?
Yeah. We've seen other people do it. We were familiar. We had experience. We're like, we can go out and step and repeat this thing. This is in like 2009. We started meeting and I created this incredible plan. And we actually started hiring some people. So this is all pre-revenue. So I had a really good kind of small core team. Now I had to go take that and raise money. Had no money. Like my dad was a bookstore manager for 40 years at BYU. So it's not like I'm going to pick up my phone and call my dad and say, hey, Dad, can you cut me a check for $250,000, right? So now you got to go convince investors, hey, give me 1.5, and I haven't created $1 in sales yet. But I got a plan.
Slinging. Yep.
This plan says I'm gonna go crush it, and I got this great small group of people. So I raised 1.5 to like 20 investors. 1.5 million I brought into the doors.
How long did it take?
It took like maybe 6 months.
Yeah.
So, and it's like a whole experience. And just so, a lot of people ask, hey, should I raise money? On one hand, it's incredible. On the other hand, there's some downside with raising money because you have certain of the 22, some were a pain.
Yep.
Some were like, a couple of them were like, hey, I want a daily reporting. I'm like, daily reporting? We're a startup. You think I can assign a full-time accountant for you? We're limited on so you just have to understand that going in and have clear expectations. But I raised 1.5.
Yep.
Launched the business. It was a live events business where we sold tickets, put big names on stage.
Cool.
Our first brand was the Automatic Millionaire. So I launched this. It's one, like Kevin's quote that I love, my business partner says, in business, poo-poo happens. And for me, poo-poo happened, right? Everything you can think of, operational sales. This is in a recession time, in 2010. All my projections, according to my spreadsheet, I was way off, like 50% off. And I was just getting pommeled trying to figure out the model, and things weren't working. There was rent. Like my first event, I did a bunch of direct mail pieces. They showed up a week after the event, to give you an idea. Oh, that's not a good thing. All right. So all this stuff was just stacked. And it wasn't like I had a tiny salary. So over the 12 months, I had blown the 1.5 gone.
Yep.
Disappeared. And it was literally on a Thursday night. I didn't have enough to make payroll the next day. So I went to the payroll company, said, don't run payroll. And I was short by like $1,500 or something the next day. And that night on Thursday, it was horrible. It was painful, punch in your gut. All these people in the office, they trusted me. They had faith in me. And I failed them. I failed my family. I failed everyone that I was supposed to be this incredible entrepreneur business guy. And I failed, right? That sucks.
Doesn't feel good.
No. So I wake up the next morning and I'm like, I'm hoping and praying for some like phantom deposit somewhere. It doesn't come. There's no deposit. So I go to lunch, and it's basically after lunch, I have to go back to the office and say, I think we had like $3,500 in the bank, and $4,500 in that range was what was due. So it was going to be 1,000 short. So I was doing the math on having to tell each person, hey, you're going to be a couple $100 off, but I'll try to make it up, And while I'm at lunch, I get a phone call from my controller, and she says, hey, Shawn, I was just digging into our safe. I found $3,000 in petty cash. What do you want me to do with it? Literally. And I was like, hey, why don't you hang on to that $3,000? I'll be right there. I screeched my tires. I drove straight there to the office. I went right to the bank, put the $3,000 in. As you guys know, going through hard times when you're broke, those dollars clear immediately.
Yep.
So then I went to the teller and I cut physical checks. And I still remember the brown color of these checks, literally visibly, just that's locked in my brain of seeing each check because it represented that we made payroll by whatever, right? Barely. So I went around back to the office and I presented each person with their check, and it was like, we made it that week. And so it was like this physical, mental pain for me. Like, there's a difference between problems and pain.
Yep.
The problem is I had a failing business, but the pain was like much deeper than that.
Yep. The shame, the guilt.
It was a physical pain.
Yeah.
And so that pain is what drove me to make a couple of big changes. Number one, I said, I love salespeople. I got to get some salespeople in here. I literally called my friends. I was like, hey, can you come sell? And they're like, yeah, you need help? And I was like, yeah, I need help. And they're like, when do you want me to start? It's like, can you be here Monday? It's like, this is on Friday. I call them and said, can you come on Monday? And I got a couple of them to come and help me just part-time. Yeah. And one of them made a sell on a Wednesday. It was like $4,000. That meant we made payroll that week again, right? And I was like, it was like literally the heavens opened and then blessings were poured down. It was like manna. this cash comes in on Wednesday. It was like a great day. It's like, hey, we can maybe get
this
this
might
in, right?
actually work.
Yeah, we might actually be able to figure it out. And then the second thing is, as I said, I have failed in my own way. I need to build relationships. I see all these. If you look at any old entrepreneur picture, the old billionaires, they generally it's them, but they also have people around them, and they do deals with big companies, and they do affiliate deals, and they do other. So I was like, I need to go out and build relationships. And so since then, that's what I've done. Is I said, okay, I'm going to go out and scale relationships. By far and away, that was the best thing I'd ever did.
That's cool.
I brought on a couple of incredible entrepreneurs in a relationship, and we were able to pay off all 22 investors over the next 12 months and go on a run. Right? It's only because of relationships. When I brought in a couple of relationships, they had relationships. And they brought their relationships to the table and affiliates and everything else, and we were able to crush it from that. So I'm a huge, huge proponent of building relationships, and definitely on the entrepreneur side, going through mental pain. It's just kind of what we have to do, and you have to talk to your friends, family. You have to build relationships. That's what helped me more than anything get through it.
So I think to talk on the mental health side, like, at those moments you're in a deep, you could call it depression, you could call it sadness, but I think what you're speaking to even today is like authentically showing up as yourself, because that's what people are buying into, is like the Shawn brand and what you stand for. How do you keep alignment to authenticity to yourself and keep showing up regardless of what everybody else has, the fear, the doubt, like even people that have everything in place that feel like they're great, sometimes they still have imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So like, how do you show up and how do you help people be that authentic version of themselves?
So, authenticity is an important piece, right? And being genuine, being real. But I think the best way to do that, like I read this article years ago in Forbes magazine, and they tracked social interaction at a party. And they interviewed everyone at the party, and they said, who is the best socially at this party? And they narrowed it down to 2 people in the whole party. And the 2 people they interviewed, and they said, how are you the most engaging person in the party? And both of their answers were the same. And both of the answers said, I just ask people about themselves. Right? And I think there's some me monster out there. Well, let me tell you, this is me, and me monster this and me monster that. Well, how can you build relationships? What does that really mean for the person?
Yeah.
So the best way to build it is literally just learn about what people are doing, what they're going through, what they have. It's just seek to understand is still the best policy and the best way to build that relationship. If you go around talking about yourself constantly, I'm doing this, what does it really mean for that person? Do they really benefit?
No, and you don't know how to help them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you don't identify what can possibly help this person.
Yep.
And it's, to me, in my experience, it's just the opposite. It's like the more you talk about me, and I've done this, well, what does that actually mean for someone that you're talking to?
You kind of get outplaced in the conversation too, and you don't know how to respond or interact. And it needs to be a give and a take. There needs to be, it's the golden currency is relationships in that point.
Yeah.
Be able to build people up and know where you can provide value if it's meaningful.
Yeah. Look at this podcast and what you guys do every week. I mean, you basically dig in and you find out from entrepreneurs, and there's great content that comes out of it, incredible content, but it's because you're getting to understand people.
And we get to have fun doing it, which is at the end of the day, we're high performers, right? And we like to have fun. That's what makes these lunches probably special, is you're having fun while you're doing it too.
Yeah, 100%.
It's not always so serious.
Yeah, but your podcast isn't sitting down and saying, let me talk to you about the recipe of this cookie.
Oh, heavens no.
Right?
That's actually sauce.
This is what we're experiencing right now. This is a real relationship. Talk about authenticity. This is real.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely. So how do you find joy and fulfillment in your day-to-day, and what brings you joy and fulfillment, whether it's work or in your personal life? Like, I know while we were at your office, you had skateboards everywhere and your rock stuff. Like, tell us a little bit about your flavor outside of the work life.
I think there's I've seen this happen a lot with entrepreneurs, is in their schedule, they like when you get there's a lot of traffic and a lot of things happen. It's like gravel happening on a daily basis. So I see entrepreneurs get buried in their schedule. And I read this book is basically schedule the most important things first. Like if you don't schedule those kind of things, where you're going out and hitting bike rides in the mountains with your friends, if you don't schedule family stuff first, then those things always go by the wayside. So literally for your schedule, next week, I invite all of you that are watching this, just pull out your schedule next week and just first schedule those important times with your children, your family, your wife, all the things. If we were to say, hey, what's at your core value for people and what's really deep down, what are they going to say?
Family, friends, personal time.
Yeah.
Those are the stuff you're going to remember in 30 years. Like, I think Jesse Itzler says it best. Like, you do the math, how many summers do you have left in your life? Like,
that's right.
You have to put perspective around those things and plan those first.
That's right. So that's one thing I do is I plan my lunches. My lunches are booked out for 2 weeks right now.
Cool.
That's first. That is such a high priority for me. So it's Roy Disney actually said when priorities are clear, decision making is easy. So if your priorities are really family and your priorities are really religion, priorities are really getting on that bike or doing what you love, then it's easy to make the decision to spend time for it.
And you mentioned absolutely. It becomes habit at that point.
Yeah.
And because making those changes into those good habits and priorities, it can be difficult at times, but once you start getting that gratification, that dopamine from making those priorities, it just starts flowing. Like even hearing 2 weeks out, I'm like, shoot, I don't even know what I'm doing 2 weeks for lunch. I'm like, it sounds like I need to start changing that behavior like right away. So I've got enough people that would want to have lunch and do these things. And it's just a matter of actually like taking the time and making it happen. So you mentioned one thing, mountain biking. Is that one of your
love it?
Tell us, how'd you get into it and like, what does it do for you?
Yeah. So I just think you got to pick some things that really move you, right? And feed your soul. And whatever that is, I see so many people just put that stuff away. It's like some people wear the grind as a badge of honor. It's like, I'm grinding. I'm going to spend 18 hours. I know someone personally that spends 16 hours working every day. 16 hours. I mean, you guys, if I gave you his name, you guys would know who he is. I'm like, how do you do this? 16 hours.
I didn't think it's possible.
Yeah. And so I just like mountain bikes, and biking is one of them that I just love getting on. All things two wheels. You get up there and you're focused on something outside of business. You got to focus on the trail. You got to focus on what you're doing. It's also a great way to go out with friends. So it's a perfect fit for me. But man, you get speed too. It feeds your soul. You get going 20, 30 miles an hour down some hill. It's like you get down, you just get that adrenaline rush, the oxygen, everything else. There's so many benefits from it.
You take me as someone that likes to be on the edge. Like, how can I push this to the limits? Like, get hurt, whatever it is, that's not even on your mind. It's just like, how much can I push this to the edge? Yeah.
So I read this book called The Comfort Crisis. And this guy just felt like he was in his 40s. He was really comfortable. So he decided to book literally living in the Antarctic with a guide for a period of time.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It's never been. It's not an outdoorsy, not a bushcraft guy. So the book is all about how he had to push through all of this stuff. And he has a whole chapter just on the mental benefits of actually going outside. So we're Zoom people because of COVID, all this stuff. We sit in front of this technology. What about just taking a little break? How much better would you perform if you just walked outside? You just talk about the noise of the birds in the air and the oxygen, and just get your mind clear and get back on it. You'll sell better if you just implement that one thing.
Well, and just looking at you, it looks like you have an Oura ring on, talking about mental health and fitness. Yeah, we invest in this at Space Station.
Yeah,
so
I got in on that with you guys.
That's a great deal right now. So it's like little things like that. And then being at your office, you have sauna and cold plunge as like staples, right? And you open that up for your team and your employees. Like, how else have you like made mental health or as a part of performance? Because one could say it's mental health, whether it's depression, anxiety, or performance, of saying like, here's how much better you could be if you do these little growth hacks, right? Yeah. How do you tell that story to the people around you?
Yeah, so you mentioned it. So at our office, we prioritize that for our people. We wanted to create a great environment where they could come and work out. So we have a full gym. We have the cold plunge and a big sauna there. And it's just great. People can come in early. And you imagine how if someone did, if you just facilitated some of this, even if you have a small office, whatever it is, some type of physical something together in your office, how much more productive you'd be. So a lot of our people will come early jump in there, they get their pump, they work out really quick, and they're ready to go. And like everything is flowing a lot better when you kind of take care of that mental and physical side, as we all know.
Absolutely is.
Yeah.
Absolutely is. What would you say, like, and we kind of talked about like helping people be more productive on their mental health. Like, what are things that are on top of your mind that you're testing out or working to implement that you would then tell somebody else? Like, what's kind of the latest and greatest that you're kind of playing with right now?
So one of the things I'm doing is I'm focusing heavy on these referrals.
Okay.
So a lot of entrepreneurs like will get referrals and they just fumble it. It's so bad. Like,
I believe that.
Like, let's say Cade here. I want to introduce you to Cade. I've built a relationship with Cade for years. We go way back now. And I want to introduce Cade to you. That is one of the best compliments I can give you because I'm like, hey, I've built this relationship for many times years. And I want to hand him over to you because I feel like there's a good alignment between you two.
Yep.
Right? That's amazing. And a lot of entrepreneurs don't even respond. And I have to back channel them and say, hey, by the way, did you see that intro I gave you for so-and-so? There's a really good deal in there. You should talk to them. Oh, yeah. I'll get. So they just don't prioritize them, right? Or they'll just say, hey, nice to meet you. And I'm like,
really?
It's like what I did on that intro. And like, I've just seen so much happen from really good intros for people.
Yep.
So the best practice is if I introduce you to Cade, you come back and say, hey, thank you so much for the referral. Try to respond right away. You don't forget, hey, thank you so much for the referral. Great to connect with you, Cade. How does your Tuesday look? Just do that one extra little piece of follow-up. Do what no one is willing to, like 98% won't do, which is actually follow-up, right?
Crazy to me.
Hey, how does your Tuesday or Wednesday morning look? Oh, that's great. Now, if it's someone that you know is a really good alignment, hey, how does your Wednesday next week for lunch look? I'd love to connect with you about it. Learn more about what you do, right? Yeah. And there's this connection and follow-up element.
How, this is more of like a personal question, but how have you seen best success for post-meeting, like catch up, like staying in touch? Like you intro to me, I say, hey, here's how this conversation went, XYZ. Like what have you found like most successful about that component? Because nobody talks about that.
Yeah, so there's two quick things. You mentioned an event because a lot of people go to an event to network.
Yep.
Most people, when they go to an event, they don't get the contact information from someone. If they're, and I'm not saying you try to get every single person in the room because there's some that don't fit what you're looking for, right? You don't want to get overrun with people that are just kind of like not helping you align your business, right? But the ones that are, then when I'm talking to you at the event and I say, hey, Mike, I'd like to, how's your Tuesday next week at 2:00? I'd love to be able to connect with you. I love what you're talking about because this is something I've been looking for and a connection I really want. So how does your Tuesday at 2:00 work or Wednesday?
It's wide open for you.
There you go. So, because if you don't do that and I leave the event and I really want to connect with Mike, I get home and I'm like, it's like that awkward. Do I text him and say, hey, I met you the other day at the event? It's kind of awkward and you don't know what to say and how to do it. So people just don't follow up. So they're good at planting the seed, but they're horrible at following up.
Yep.
As opposed to, hey, I'm already set. I have a 2:00 with Mike the next week.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
It's just all about that little follow through, that extra little follow through will really expand people's networks more than anything.
Believe that completely.
Right? Yeah.
Kind of getting to the last question here. Mm-hmm. How do you want to be remembered?
I've been thinking about this. So it's like, what can you take with us? So, I mean, what's life really all about?
Connections, people. Mm-hmm. That's all we have. We can't take anything else with us.
Yeah. I was thinking about that this morning. It's like, we're like this AI is a new thing, right? Everyone's the buzz. I love it. I think it's phenomenal. It can only enhance what we do and make us better, in my opinion, of technology. However, the more technology we get, the less we have the human element. And that's the biggest threat. I mean, maybe there is a lot smarter people than me that just will know that this thing's going to attack us one day and destroy the earth. I don't know how that works. But for me personally, I think the biggest threat is we become less humanized in our interaction.
It absolutely is.
Right? I mean, think about at one point you would actually pick up the phone and call someone, and now we're texting. And now AI, what if AI is doing all that work? Where's the human connection?
There isn't.
That's the biggest threat to me. And so that's why I think this networking, engaging with people is going to be more important than ever in the future. So I want to be known as that guy.
Got it.
Greatest way to scale your business is scale relationships.
I love it. I love it. And, how can people connect with you? How can they get involved in the stuff that you're working on? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I'm everywhere on social. Go to taxhive.com, check it out there. We wanted to provide tons of value for people on taxhive.com. So even if you don't engage with our services, you'll learn a lot for a business owner on taxhive.com. And then I'm Finnegan Shawn on everything.
Cool.
So Twitter, Instagram, everything else. I'd love to connect with you. Send me a DM. I'm probably going to invite you to a pizza lunch. Like I have a pitch and pizza event this week and a social event. I mean, that's what I live for. So that's what it's all about for me.
And you've got a rad office that people are going to come to, right?
It's we've created this great office that's now a magnet for people coming in those doors. So on a weekly basis, we have, this week, I think we'll have 300 people walk through those doors this week.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
pretty amazing.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, Shawn, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you guys.
And we'll be in touch, and everybody here knows where to come find you now.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate it.